Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be about the patch 7.32D, and as usual, I'm just going to go through all of the changes pretty briefly, quickly. I'm not going to get into all the detail about what it means. Usually, I'm just going to give you the highlights about whether the change was important. I think obviously, a lot of people were getting sick of this patch. There was some very broken things in the patch that were just kind of boring to play ever since TI. The meta has developed a little bit, but not really. It's kind of been the same. So thankfully, this patch hasn't really done anything drastic other than just nerf those things that were OP and that were actually pretty boring in the game. So I think it actually makes the game a little bit fresh, a little better, until probably we're going to see a big patch either in December or I would say like January, maybe depending on the DPC when that happens, around that. But in any case, I'm going to go through these changes, and before we get into it, I just briefly wanted to say thanks everybody for watching, subscribing, all of these things, and following along. I'm going to be uploading a lot more come here in the future. Life has been pretty busy over the last month, so I haven't really been able to focus on this channel, but I will be kind of kicking it into overdrive here in a week or so. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to be trying to do guides for every single hero, a lot of different new stuff coming down the pipe, so stay tuned. So anyway, let's just jump into the gameplay update, the patch 7.32D. So to start, we're just going to look at the general changes. If you go down the line here, you can see that it says fixed for pretty much every single one. I'm not going to focus on these things because it's just stuff that should have already been in the game as you thought it was supposed to be, and then they just fixed it, which is good to see that they're doing this, but I'm not going to focus on those because I don't think they're super relevant to what's happening or like to the game, or you're not going to be super interested in those. So first, we're going to take a look actually at the only real general change that happened that wasn't a fix, and that is the flag bearer creep bonus gold for allies in range increased by 10. Now 10 gold, not a lot. It's just the general thing that they've been doing with Dota over the years is giving supports more gold, which is basically what is happening here, which is just kind of a continued trend. Now I will say that when they introduced this creep, I think they were sort of planning to have this be like a mini siege creep because of the regen and the magic resistance and all this kind of stuff, and the extra gold, but I don't really think this creep has mattered that much. Like, it's a little mini, it's more of a range creep in terms of its importance than it is a siege creep. So, I mean, maybe I'm just thinking their intention was different, but since they gave it all these things, I was thinking, oh wow, now the waves, it's gonna be way more dynamic in the lane, like this is gonna be so important. But really, it's not. All it is just you want to get this last hit a little bit extra. You kind of focus on that a little bit more because it gives you extra gold, just like you focus on the range creep a little bit more because it gives you extra XP. That's really the only change. So we'll see if they kind of keep buffing the creep bonus gold or the regen or any of that kind of stuff to make this more of like a siege creep, to really have to play around it more. We'll see how that changes into the future. So anyway, that's the only real general change. Now let's go into the item changes. First, we can take a look at blade mail being buffed. Really nothing crazy to talk about here. It's just that this item is pretty much dead. Only a few heroes buy it, like basically Axe, maybe Legion Commander, and basically those heroes aren't very popular because they didn't buy WRAITH PACT, and WRAITH PACT was like the main item this patch. But now, because with this buff, and we'll eventually see WRAITH PACT nerfed, this buff might be significant because it might be good just in the fact that these blade mail buying offlaners will be better with WRAITH PACT being nerfed. So anyway, that's blade mail. Not too much else to talk about there. Bloodstone, it was pretty much only a Leshrac item. No one else really bought it. I mean, I think maybe like a Pudge could have bought it here and there or something like that, but it's really just a Leshrac item. And Leshrac, Brood, Primal Beast, these are all heroes that are super OP, so all of that kind of stuff has been nerfed. And then things that haven't been played at all have been buffed. So obviously, Bloodstone nerfed. We'll see if this is enough to get Leshrac out of the meta, but it's just not as OP as it once was. Boots of Bearing, no one bought this, so it's just a small buff, not really significant. Crimson Guard, no one's bought this item for years, so it's probably going to get buffed even more. I don't know that 2 armor is enough. Maybe it is, but I feel like this is only going to be good if like PL is really good or something, because I think this item is pretty good against PL, because we see Naga being pretty popular, or at least in higher MMRs, and still nobody buys Crimson Guard. But, now that WRAITH PACT, like I said, is nerfed, so maybe Crimson Guard, these Vanguard buyers are going to be more inclined to get this. It just seems like also Abyssal Blade is just always going to be better to build from your Vanguard, even if you're an offlaner that doesn't necessarily right-click, just for that extra stun, than getting Crimson Guard. So that's the story for this item. Drum, been dead for a long time, just like Boots of Bearing, not really relevant, so they just kind of buffed it a little bit, but not much at all. Guardian Greaves, another kind of dead item that's more of like an aura item, because Pipe, WRAITH PACT, all those items have always been better. So now they're buffing this a little bit. We'll see if this is enough with the nerfs to the other things to make this more relevant. Hard to say. It's also hero dependent. Like, are the heroes that like buying Guardian Greaves popular? It's also kind of a support item sometimes too. So we'll see if that comes into the meta. Pipe, it says barrier blocked magical damage increased from 400 to 450. Which is interesting because I believe the wording is a little bit weird, but I believe this is a buff just to the barrier that you get up to 450, which Pipe was already a really popular item because it would be Wraith Pact and then Pipe, and you would buy those things together, and it would just be insane damage mitigation. So I'm surprised they actually buffed it if I'm reading it correctly, which is interesting. So I think Pipe of Insight is a very, very good item right now. Probably the best of the kind of support aura items because it already was pretty good, and now it's even better. Veil of Discord, kind of a dead item, and one stat's not really going to change much, I don't think. Wraith Pact, this is the big one, obviously. It no longer reduces magical or pure damage, which is extremely, extremely important because before, as some people may have memed about, it reduced all damage, which was insane. It was just too OP. Like, you had to have one in every single game. Usually the offlaner bought it. Sometimes the support bought it, but like you just had to have one. It was just mandatory. Now it kind of fits actually with the fact that it's a Vlad's item, like a build-up from Vlad's, that is more of a right-click physical damage item with the armor and with the lifesteal. So now it just basically is a physical damage counter. So basically, if you have a team that you're going up against that is very much a physical damage team with a lot of right-clickers, you have a right-clicking carry, you have a Slardar, you have a right-clicking mid like a Lina, and those are, obviously she does spell damage too, but a lot of mids do spell damage along with right-clicks, if they do right-clicks, that is. And so, you have a lot of right-clicking damage there, a lot of physical damage, and so you buy the Wraith Pact instead of buying the Pipe. I think this kind of is a good transition where you have Pipe as the, their team is super focused on magic damage, I'm going to buy the Pipe. You have the Wraith Pact, their team is super focused on physical damage, I'm buying the Wraith Pact. I think that's a good change. The fact that it reduced all damage was kind of ridiculous. I think this is kind of cool. We'll see what happens with this because I think Wraith Pact was super broken, like at one of the majors, it got nerfed, people stopped buying it. It didn't get buffed at all, and then it was just broken again at TI. I think people forgot about it. So I think this is obviously going to kill the item a lot. I think people are just going to stop buying it because people have been so sick of it. But I think it's actually a good change. I think it's at a decent spot, and you can still buy it. I just think people won't because they're sick of it. So that's Wraith Pact. I think this is the big change that everyone is going to be happy about. And really, this is the thing. This is the number one change of the patch because this is going to change all the offlaners that are viable, all the items other items you can buy, all the heroes like, then the carries and the mids and everything just like changes from this one change because now picks you can pick different heroes. Maybe Axe is way better now because he wasn't a Wraith Pact buyer and he's been getting buffed a lot and he seems pretty good. So maybe he's going to be a really good offlaner now, and it's going to change the whole meta because of who, carries that are good against Axe and then supports that are good against those carries and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just going to snowball from there. So anyway, that's Wraith Pact. I kind of spent the most time on that because that's the biggest change of the patch. And now we're going into hero changes. So these are kind of like smaller changes. There are some big changes for the big heroes, and but it's nothing drastic. There's no crazy reworks or anything like that. So let's just jump into it. First, we have Alchemist. Just kind of buffs on Alchemist. It's not an Alchemist patch, so they buff it. It kind of just always seems like Alchemist is either buffed because he wasn't played at all, or he's nerfed because it was an Alchemist patch, and that's kind of just what happened. We'll see if this is enough to put him back into the meta, but I almost don't really ever feel like the buffs or the nerfs are the things that make him good. It's almost like whether or not the meta surrounding everything else, like everything else, is just viable for the Alchemist to be good, if that makes sense. Like the way the map is set up, the heroes that are picked, all that kind of stuff. So obviously good buffs for a dead hero, but we'll see if that's enough. Arc Warden, some small changes here, just a talent change. That's not a big deal. Tempest Double cooldown reduction decreased, which it was kind of insane because once you did get to the max level in this hero, it was really ridiculous. Like this cooldown reduction from 50% to 40, because 50% cooldown reduction, you would just like spam Hex and spam Gleipnir and all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of ridiculous. I don't think this hero was like insane, but it was pretty good. Like if you were a good Arc Warden player, it was pretty OP, honestly. So there's small nerfs here to the Ags and to this 25 talent, but I still think it's a pretty good hero. It's just not like broken in the late game as much as it was. It's still pretty good though, especially since you can bubble the buildings. It just makes it so annoying. Axe, small buff. Not a big deal, but I think the other changes are more important to whether or not this hero is going to be good. This is a big change, I think, to Bounty Hunter. Now reduces attack speed on hit by 16, 24, 32, 40. This is big. I mean, it slows your invis. You do a lot of damage, and now you slow attack speed too. So this just gives this hero another way to be annoying. Like, if you almost have to have a Dispel or pop BKB or whatever to get rid of this. Like, this hero can now man fight you, and I think this makes this hero pretty much like viable as a carry, I would almost say, because 40 attack speed, I mean, that's significant. It's going to be hard to man fight up against a Bounty Hunter, just with the fact that he does so much damage, and now he's like slowing you, reducing this attack damage. We'll see what happens. Bounty Hunter is just one of these weird heroes that almost seems to never be popular because of, like, it's just such an odd hero. So we'll see if this is enough. I don't think it's going to be enough, but it is kind of an interesting thing that they've changed here, because it's just giving this hero something that didn't have previously. Bristleback, small buff, not really a big deal. I mean, it's good for the laning stage, but this hero has been nerfed a lot in the past because it was so broken. Broodmother, another hero that was one of the heroes of the patch. Everyone hates this hero, so everyone wants to see it gone. Thankfully, it did get nerfed, but not a lot, honestly. The vision radius for spiderlings was decreased, which is significant because you can't, like, sending them around. Now they have, like, no vision, so you kind of can't, you have to spread them out or something like that. It's just, they don't have nearly as much vision, which is kind of good. And then the root duration for the spinner's snare, which is the Ags, I believe, which just, it was actually way too broken. Like, if you could get this item, if you got your Wraith Pact, your pipe, you know, whatever it was, and you got your Ags, it was just crazy. Like, it's just a global thing that just roots you forever. I mean, but honestly, only rooting 3 instead of 4, is it really that much worse? I don't know. I mean, I think, I don't know if these are enough to honestly get the hero out of the meta, but we'll see. It's just, I would like to have seen more Broodmother nerfs, to be honest. Chaos Knight was once pretty good. They nerfed him a bunch. Now they buffed him a little bit, but really not that much, just more damage. And then a talent change, not a big deal. Crystal Maiden had become a pretty good support. So now they nerfed the allied mana regen outside of proximity radius decreased. It kind of just makes it more of something that your laning partner benefits from rather than the people around the map. But it's really not a ton, but it is good. I mean, at max level, it is half of a mana regen. So that's pretty significant, honestly. I don't know if that's enough to make this hero bad, but this hero is always, like, you know, it's kind of right on the precipice of being bad because you just feed constantly. So it's just like, it's basically a creep. So now that they're nerfing part of it, it might just be out of the meta completely. Dark Willow, they just buffed damage on the hero for Bramble Mace. Not a big deal. Dazzle, they're just forcing this hero into the meta. They really, really want this hero to be in the meta. It just seems like it kind of comes in the meta and then it falls back out. Like, people are like, oh, Dazzle's really good, they buffed it, and then it falls away. So they're buffing it again. Poison Touch duration is now increased by 1 second every level, which is really significant because that just gives you more time to, like, right-click them again to reapply it, which is really significant. I don't know if this is finally going to be enough to get Dazzle to be picked, but we'll see. But it does definitely seem like this hero could potentially be broken. But then they nerfed the mana cost, which is kind of dumb, at least at early levels. So I don't know. Who knows? Death Prophet. This hero is either completely broken or very bad. It just seems like it's either never picked or picked all the time. They increased the damage because it just so happened to be not picked very much, but it's not a lot of damage. 10 damage, whatever. And then magic resistance by a little bit, whatever. Not a big deal. Disruptor was pretty good, probably one of the best supports right now, so they increased the mana cost on Glimpse because one of the biggest things was they gave Glimpse a damage. Basically, it just does damage now, which is significant because now people can't just, like, blink out of the Glimpse once you get Glimpse back, and it actually can get kills and stuff in lane, and it just does that extra damage for, you know, when someone's trying to run away. It's just good overall. So Disruptor's been pretty good, picked a lot, so now they nerfed it. Doom, which I'm surprised they actually increased the DPS on Scorched Earth, which is actually surprising because I think Doom has kind of been getting some play. People have been saying Doom is a little bit broken now, but it's just, the problem was it just wasn't a Wraith Pact buyer. Look for Doom to be like the offlaner now. It's pretty greedy. You know, it can just carry games with the new Ags, with the way this hero works. People are buying like Octarine now. It's ridiculous. And now it does even more damage with Scorched Earth, and you don't buy Wraith Pact anymore. Like, this hero is just going to be, I think, the best offlaner. Dragon Knight, this hero's been dead for a long time. I don't think some small buffs to the damage and a little bit of the cooldown, like, okay, 10 seconds, whatever. I don't think that's going to be relevant. Drow has been a pretty popular carry recently, so they just made Gust a little bit more of like, it's just harder to have this as a 1-point wonder, because you would just leave this at 1 point, but now it's the 3-second cooldown longer at 1 point, so it just nerfs the heroes like earlier game when it only has 1 point, but overall still the same hero. Earth Spirit hasn't been picked for a long, long time. I'm surprised this hero isn't getting more love, because it just seems like I've never seen Earth Spirit be like a pro pick. So they are buffing it a little bit, but again, very small. Enigma, one of the most popular offlaners, and they just basically decrease the attack range, which is significant, I think. 75 at the early levels. It makes it so that you will feed Eidolons a lot more, which is definitely something you need to do, because these Eidolons or it's like a good nerf, I mean, because these Eidolons are worth a lot, actually. Like, unlike Treants from Nature's Prophet, which are just completely useless to kill and they have a ton of HP, these are pretty easy to kill, and they give a lot of gold. So they're just definitely worth killing, but they also do a lot of damage, and they're super annoying. So the fact that early on you can easily kill them, it just makes this hero a lot harder to play in lane. Grimstroke, a hero that I don't know, this hero just has been gone forever. Like, it's just never good. They finally reverted, like maybe last patch or a couple patches ago, they reverted that change where the Ink Swell, I believe it is, the stun, it was back to what it was before, like the delay, because they made it longer and it was super weird. But now they're just buffing it a little bit. But again, small buffs. I don't think that's relevant to make it actually good. Like, it's not like huge changes. Gyro, this hero's been kind of out of the meta for a long time. So now they're just increasing the flat cannon attacks a little bit here at level 15, so you can just farm more. But the problem is it's a level 15. So you already want to be farming. Like, you're not, once you get level 15, that's kind of the time where, yes, you are going to be farming, but you're already, like, you've already cleared stacks. You already want to have a good game and clear through the jungle and all that kind of stuff by level 15. Like, that's a little bit late to be getting this extra flat cannon attack. So kind of a weird change there. Not a huge buff. Keeper of the Light, turn rate increased and damage increased. Whatever. Small buffs, not huge. Not a big deal, I don't think. Kunkka, the ghost ship width is kind of significant because you just can hit this more in fights. I think the width also helps apply the rum buff better, so it like hits more allies, which is obviously really good because that buff is super, it's just like this super underrated part of the ult. And then obviously later in the game when you get that fleet, it can be just insane. So you could just, like, you know, obviously control an entire area of the team fight, which is really, really good. And then the rum buff, the bonus speed increased, so the rum buff that you get from the ghost ship is also better. So this is kind of, I like this change for Kunkka. I don't know if it's enough to make him super relevant, but it is pretty cool. I like that they're making his ult a little bit better, like the team fighty version of Kunkka. That doesn't just go like any damage, kind of just goes for ags and all that kind of stuff. They're making that better. Legion Commander, the 20 moment of talent or talent moment of courage proc chance increased from 10 to 12%, whatever. Small buff, but whatever, not a big deal. Leshrac, finally one that we want to get nerfed. So the Agnum Shard radius bonus decreased, which is definitely significant because this shard was super annoying. It wasn't the reason the hero was broken, but like once you got it as an extra thing, it just was just further reasons that the hero was broken. Like trying to siege high ground if you were winning, or trying to push, back against a Leshrac that was sieging your high ground was super hard because this hero would just have like all these split earths like kind of constantly coming down on the ground around a team fight. It was very annoying. And now the Pulse Nova, they've kind of been changing how this works a little bit. Has a 1 second cooldown when you toggle it off. So now you can't just like spam it on and off, which I don't think people were doing much anyway, but still there's a little bit of a punishment from, a little bit of a punish when you turn it off. You can't just turn it right back on. And then the damage was decreased overall, which is, it says only 10 obviously, but this is like a pulse that's happening constantly. So 10 damage is pretty significant there. And then the 10 talent, the mana regen decreased a little bit. So again, I don't know if this is enough to make this hero completely garbage, but they did nerf Bloodstone, and they did nerf it a little bit, but I still think it's good. It's just not completely broken and absolutely ridiculous like it was, but it's still very good, I think. Kind of like with Brood, they didn't really nerf it enough. I like that they nerfed WRAITH Pact a lot, but the fact that they didn't nerf Brood or Leshrac as much is kind of annoying to me, but, hey, at least a little bit of a nerf is good. Lion, general buffs on this hero because it's kind of been irrelevant for a long time, just more damage. And the Hex cooldown, which is on the talents, is better now, increased from 2 to 3. So you have just more hexes in team fights. Marcy, another completely broken hero, picked like every single game. I think this hero's, I don't know, man. I don't want to say it's dead, but it does seem very bad now compared to what it was, at least. The cast and jump range decreased from 800 to 450 at level 1. So And the speed also decreased by 300. So this is a lot worse. Rebound is just way worse. And this is your stun now. So you actually have to hit this ability. Like before, you could just rebound in, it was a slow, whatever, and then you're tossing people back. But now if they change those two things, like you have to hit this spell. And the fact that the range is way worse, and it happens slower, so you can like react with, you know, jug spin or whatever it is, to like make sure you can shrug off the stun, it just makes this a lot worse. I think this is probably, of the heroes that were broken, this is the biggest nerf, I would say. It makes it a lot harder. Like 800 to 450, that is a big deal because that's the cast and the jump range. So like that's basically a 700 range decrease overall, which is kind of insane. At level 1 at least. So just the laning stage in this hero is not nearly as good. Obviously max level, it's still similar. And you can still do some of the same stuff you did, but and the lifesteals decrease here, which is obviously, that's significant too, but this was kind of crazy broken. So I still think once you get into the later portion of the game, you still do the same stuff, but you're just not like as insane of a laner as you once were. In fact, you might be somewhat of a liability. Now we have Mars. This hero always seems to be somewhat relevant, but it's gotten a lot worse because they've just nerfed it so much over the years because it was always relevant. So speed penalty is now decreased by not much, small buff there, and then the talent reduction increased for the side and front damage. So it just bulwark buffs, which whatever. I don't think that's really the reason anyone picks this hero, but it's cool that it's better. Medusa was good for a very long time, finally got out of the meta, and now they're buffing it just a little bit though. Not super big. I don't think that's going to be enough to actually make the hero good. It obviously depends on the development of the rest of the meta around Wraith Pact. Monkey King, armor bonus increased in Wukong's command early, which is kind of cool. I mean, late game, 24 armor in your Wukong's command is absolutely insane, so it just makes it even harder to fight into that early Wukong. And then the cast point was improved as well, so this just makes Monkey a little bit better. I think Monkey's also a pretty good hero, so look for Monkey to be kind of one of the best heroes right now, because I think it's already pretty good, and now, you know, these changes make it not broken, but definitely viable. Morphling was kind of like this, you know, if you're a Morphling player, like this hidden gem where you can just get this Ags, and then you, if they have like an agility carry, you just own them because they can't attack you ever because their attack speed is decreased by like insane amounts. So that's kind of a hero that is pretty broken, I would say, if you know how to play it and you're like, you can stomp with the hero definitely. But now the cooldown is increased, which is significant. Not a lot, but 1 second, whatever. And then the Ag Scepter no longer reduces the cooldown, which I think is definitely significant because the problem with this is you would just turn into the enemy carry and then you would take a fight, and then like basically by the time it was done, you could almost like turn into them again. It was kind of insane. Like you just didn't have a carry in your game if Morph had Ags. So now that's definitely better. It just makes it not as broken. Like you can punish, you Morphs, you know, you could see him use Morph, and then you're just like, okay, we'll disengage now, wait for it to be done, and then we can fight again. And then obviously a small change here to the talent, but not a big deal. Naga, pretty good carrier right now. They just decreased the strength gain in the armor, just makes this hero not as crazy of a laner, but those things are also important, especially because it's an illusion-based hero. I don't know how much, I'm not a huge Naga player, so I don't know how much this is going to really matter. It is significant, definitely a worse lane, definitely makes your illusions not as tanky, but don't know that that's going to be like enough to really change the dynamic of the hero. Nature's Prophet, the cooldown decreased a little bit on teleportation, but max level, it's still the same, so I don't really see this being super relevant, like 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, whatever. And then the duration on this Curse of Old Growth is decreased by, or increased by 1, which is just, I mean, this is terrible as far as I can tell. Like, I just think everyone thinks this is terrible. So unless I'm wrong and for some reason this is good and just people don't realize that it's good and they just haven't been picking it, this is not going to be enough to change that. Necro, this is actually a pretty big change. Increased magic damage decreased from 40% to 25%. That basically means when you use Ghost Shroud, you take increased magic damage, but now instead of 40%, you take 25%. This hero is very annoying when it's good. Look out for Necro to be pretty good. It's hard to say. It's just one of these heroes that doesn't buy Wraith Pact if you go off lane. It's kind of a weird mid laner, but definitely viable. But 25%, that's a significant buff. You're not taking nearly as much magic damage compared to what you were. You could buy Hood, all these other things to just help with that. And yeah, I don't know. That's a pretty cool change. I like that. Or at least if you're a Necro player, I play a good amount of Necrophos. So that just makes the hero a lot better. It's like eliminating one of its weaknesses, basically, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's still weaker, but just not nearly as much. Because now you're definitely going to be out-healing like this extra magic damage you're taking. Nyx's stun duration increase for Spike Carapace, which is pretty cool. or decreased, sorry, which is pretty cool because this ability was just so annoying, man. Like, dude, you get stunned for 2.4 seconds. That's an insane amount of stun with Spike Carapace with this like uncontrollable damage. So this hero was so annoying. I feel like Spike Carapace is honestly one of the most annoying spells in the game. So seeing this nerfed, like I wouldn't mind if they just like took 0.4 seconds off of this spell and just gave his actual stun 0.4 more seconds. Like that's just like make this stun 1 second. I don't know. And then like give his impale like more duration for stun because this thing is so annoying. So I'm glad they did that. Ogre, Magi, just a little bit of buff for the regen. Whatever, not a big deal. They kind of changed this hero being tanky in the armor department to more tanky in the regen department. So it's kind of cool that they did that. Oh, wait, I thought they... Wait, base health regen increased from 0.25 to 0.75. I thought that it was like they changed it and gave it a lot of regen. Am I high? I thought it had like 5 regen or something. Am I wrong? I'm crazy, dude. Maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know. I thought it had like insane regen. Maybe they reverted that. Maybe I'm just wrong. Somebody let me know in the comments what happened with that because I thought this hero had like ridiculous regen now instead of armor. Whatever. Pango, pretty strong hero right now. So the 15 talent, they changed that a little bit. The shield crash cooldown and ball increased. So whatever. I don't think that's super relevant. Phantom Assassin has been kind of a dead carry. It was like kind of okay, and then it was like buffed a couple patches ago, like 6 months ago, and it was like broken because of the lifesteal on Phantom Strike and all this stuff, and then they nerfed it to the ground for whatever reason. Now it's like the worst carry in the game. I mean, it's still very good to like carry late game if in low MMRs, but it's just kind of terrible at higher MMRs. So I just gave it more regen in lane, and then the mana cost decreased overall, which is good. So you're pretty much going to be buying, you can just spam it more in the jungle. You don't really need that component, the Void Stone or whatever component of the Battle Fury as much, which is cool. So some needed buffs, good buffs. Still think it's a good hero in low MMRs, like I said, but otherwise, I don't think this is enough to make the hero relevant. Primal Beast, a very strong hero right now. So they changed Onslaught to basically just the decreased damage. So it's not much, but just in the early laning stage, it's just not as crazy of a hero. But the thing is, this hero's still insanely tanky, hard to kick out of lane, and hard to really harass or do anything, kill or anything in the beginning of the game. So that damage decrease just makes it less annoying and OP, but it's still very good at laning. And then the run is now canceled if Primal Beast is stunned during it. So that's interesting. And I honestly didn't even know you couldn't stun him when he was like, flying at you. I actually didn't really realize that, but the fact that you couldn't was insane. So now it's good that you can do that. It's like an actual mobility spell that you can interrupt, which is pretty nice. So Puck, Dream Coil, initial damage increased a little bit, which is good. This hero wasn't really picked too much, but just a small buff there. Good buff for that hero. This hero's been good a lot, though, so you don't really want this hero to be, like, honestly really good. It's kind of annoying when Puck's, like, really good in the meta, but it just makes sense that they're going to buff it when it hasn't seen much play. Not a crazy buff, though. Pudge has been super popular, and so they decreased the base health regen and then made Flesh Heap just the cooldown increased. So you're not going to be able to use it as much with farming. You're not going to be able to use it like as many times in team fights. It is significant. 3 seconds at the last duration. That's pretty significant, honestly. So really, you're only going to be able to use this once, maybe twice in a team fight. So it's really more important now when you use it, and you're not going to be able to farm near, like, you can still farm as fast. You're just going to take more damage from your rot. So I still think people are going to think this hero's popular, and not OP, but they're still going to pick it because everyone loves Pudge. Pugna, out of the meta for a long time, so they just increased the cast range. They're trying to make this hero more of a core. Last time it was in the meta, it was a support, so they just want this hero to be a core, which I think this is what this does. And I would like to see this hero more as a core. It's just annoying as a support and just relies on basically its Nether Ward, and that's just annoying. It's just not like a cool part of the hero. I want to see this hero be like offensive, draining people, all that kind of stuff. Queen of Pain, kind of a dead hero right now. One of the worst heroes in Dota, honestly. And they changed the Ags to be this weird thing that like is just terrible. I think the concept is absolutely awful. It's like, I don't even really know exactly what it does. Like reapplies, or it just does like a scream when Shadow Strike runs out or is reapplied. But I don't know. It's just like terrible. Like it doesn't do what you think it should do or something. I'm not exactly sure. But it's really, I think it basically doesn't apply to the hero itself, only the heroes around it, which is really bad. So they're changing that a little bit, just buffing it, but it's not enough. And then they decreased the cooldown overall for Sonic Wave, which I guess is fine. I mean, that's good. That's definitely needed. 90 seconds now is not that bad, 1.5 minutes, so that's cool, way better than 2 minutes, because this ultimate wasn't even, I mean, it's good, but it just felt like, okay, 2 minute cooldown, over 2 minute cooldown for this, like, kind of whatever damage spell when you have other things like Black Hole. Like all these other long cooldown spells are like way better than Sonic Wave. So that's definitely a cool, much needed change. But the buffs overall I don't think are enough to make this hero relevant. Razor was really good for a long time, got nerfed into the ground. Now they're just increasing this hero's shard damage and the agility on 10 talent, but I don't think that's enough to make the hero better than it was. It's just kind of the same thing. Base damage on Rubik increased, whatever. Just a small buff. Good for Rubik players. Sand King, been out of the meta for a bit. Base damage increased. And then the debuff duration for Caustic Finale increased as well. That's kind of cool, but again, not significant, I don't really believe. And then Shadow Demon, I don't even know what this ability does. I know they changed it. Now the radius is increased. Whenever the target takes damage, all enemies include... Okay, so it's like the Dispel thing, right? Or no, it's like the... Within the target... Okay. Whatever. Whatever, dude. I don't care. No one picks this hero. I'll learn what this does when people pick the hero, and I ever see it in a game ever. Like I just never see it. So I'll learn what this does when someone picks it. Shared damage, like whatever. I don't care. Shadow Fiend, very good hero right now. So or not okay, not very good. It's not like the most. It's not like a Marcy. It's not like a Brood. It's not one of these heroes, but it is very good. So obviously they nerfed it, but what is this nerf? Like this nerf is not a big deal, honestly. It's just not a big deal. Like 0.1 second on the whatever, not a big deal. So it's basically the same hero. Shadow Fiend pretty good right now. Shadow Shaman, mana cost decreased on his Ether Shock, better in laning, or actually not in laning because later it's just better for clearing waves and farming. So not even better in laning really. So I guess whatever. I mean, not a huge buff, but whatever. Enough of a buff. And then Shackle damage increased, which is cool. They've been trying to push this hero. A lot of these supports like Shadow Shaman, they're really trying to push into the meta more with buffs because they just never seem to be viable. A lot of these squishy supports, and then eventually they come into the meta and then they get nerfed. That's just what happens. Silencer radius increased on Arcane Curse, or decreased because this was one of the best supports right now. And mainly because Black Hole, honestly. I feel like that's really just the reason. So we'll see now with Wraith Pact being out if actually... Honestly, I think Wraith Pact, just like buying it on Enigma, is one of these weird things, like good in pro meta, but probably not that good in normal meta. So we'll see if the nerfs to Enigma are enough to get that hero out of the meta. And if that hero's out of the meta, Silencer might be out of the meta. They keep trying to make this hero more of a core, and I would like to see this hero more of like an OD style core than just the support that just wants to press R, honestly. I mean, it's good that Silencer is in the game because that ult is like kind of necessary as just like a last-ditch measure to counter some of these heroes like Enigma, but it just feels really boring when you pick a Silencer just to press R. Like, that's just super boring and not a very fun concept. Snapfire, they made the Scatterblast damage increase to level 10, which is good for clearing waves. That's pretty cool, but really not that, like, whatever. And then Sniper, a very good hero right now. Probably one of the best Sniper patches it's been for this hero in like 5, 6, 7 years. Whenever the Sniper Troll patch happened was the last time it was this good. So they obviously increased the mana cost and decreased the radius for Shrapnel, which is significant. Not as significant for farming, like one camp, but definitely for two. Like if you're stacking a camp or trying to pull them into each other, this really hurts being able to farm all of them because the creeps run out of that radius. And then also obviously chasing people down, having these in team fights. So definitely a significant nerf. This hero doesn't really have too much mana cost or mana issues, except for when you have to use ult or when you're trying to use ult. So now this just makes it so you just maybe actually have mana issues when you're trying to use all of your spells. Storm Spirit was very good when the Null Talisman was good, or when the Null Talisman had that regen component, decreased or mana cost component, and now it's just this hero's been bad ever since they changed that. So they just kind of buffed it a little bit here, but really 0.1, whatever. Sven was kind of at a weird spot. It was like a good spot, but it was kind of picked as a support sometimes a little bit. And so they just decreased the armor aura bonus on Warcry to make it like this hero should be a core. Like picking it just for Warcry is awkward and weird and doesn't feel good. I mean, one armor is kind of whatever, but it's still just like discouraging people from picking it as a support, which is kind of cool. I mean, I like the fact that Dota, you can do whatever you want and pick like Sven as a, support, but it just felt weird to just pick it for like a stun and this. Techies, Sticky Bomb cast point. I think this hero is actually legitimately good. Like this hero can like solo kill cores with magic damage, but people just don't pick it. But now Sticky Bomb is way easier to hit, which is cool. Templar Assassin was very good for a long time, but now out of the meta, and they just kind of buffed Sonic Trap a little bit, but honestly, whatever. It's just better for farming and stuff like that when you're trying to hit Ancients, because the time to fully charge it is less, but it's whatever. Terrorblade cooldown decrease for Reflection. Just makes this more valuable in lane to actually get like a point or many points in this maybe, so you can just spam it in lane a little bit more, which is kind of cool. Timbersaw, that was very good for a long time, then they nerfed it a lot, and now it's kind of completely out of the meta, so they're increasing the flamethrower duration, and then they're changing the 25 talent a little bit, or just buffing it, which, I mean, that's not enough to make Timbersaw. If the nerfs changed Timbersaw, or the changes to Timbersaw nerfed him enough to like get him out of the meta, this is not going to be enough to get him back. Tiny, one of the really broken heroes that's super annoying. So they changed the radius on Avalanche. They decreased that, and then Tree Volley cooldown increased by 2 seconds, which is very good. I'm glad that they did this. Tiny is a super annoying hero to deal with. Now, like, Avalanche just feels like the range on that spell was insane. And now, because the radius is decreased by 30 at the last level, I think you're just going to find that it's just a lot harder to hit avalanches on heroes like far away. Which is definitely a needed change ever since they made this base spell like undodgeable or whatever, and not have like a periodic thing where it's like a weird like fractured, stun where it's just like continuous again. I definitely think this needed to be nerfed. And then Tree Volley late game, that ability was so insane, dude. You just like every 15 seconds, like 2 or 3 times in a team fight, you would just have trees flying at your face and you would just instantly die. Like, everyone would just die. So it's good to see that's nerfed. I don't know if this is enough to make Tiny that much worse. Like, core Tiny's still very good where you blink on top of them. Like, the radius is not going to matter that much, and Tree Volley's still very good, but just makes this hero not as broken. Treant has been bad for a long time, I think. So they're buffing it overall here. Cast point, damage, cast range, and then DPS on Overgrowth. We'll see if that's enough to make this hero relevant. They've been kind of changing this hero up, trying to make this hero different. I think this hero has potential, but it's just not being picked and not really. I don't know that these are significant changes. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if that's enough to actually make the hero good. Troll, they're buffing this hero, but this hero is not going to be viable. It's not going to be good until they change the ultimate. Not being able to control your hero is never going to be good. It's never going to be good. This hero will never be meta. Mark my words, it will never happen until they stop the uncontrollable thing with the ult, or like make you use items or something. Something needs to change with the ult, because it's just absolutely terrible. Undying was one of these heroes that was like, it was kind of broken, but then like not super broken. I don't know. It was like weird because it's very annoying and super broken to deal with. Like, it feels just so bad. But then sometimes it would just feel like super low impact. And it was like one of these heroes that people were playing it off lane, and then it just kind of died as an off laner. So anyway, they did nerf the talents, but only the 15 talents. So like, I think it's just the same hero. So, which is pretty annoying for strength offlaners, like as a support. But I just feel like it fell off as a offlaner. But maybe now with the Wraith Pact change, that'll change or something. I'm not sure. But I think Wraith Pact was actually good in combo with this hero, because now you have like this Wraith Pact. You have this totem on the ground. Like, which one do you hit? You have to hit both. It's super annoying. So maybe that's why they didn't nerf it that much, because Wraith Pact was enough to like bring the viability of the hero down a little bit. But anyway, Viper, they buffed the hero with the mana cost decrease, and then the nosedive, which is this might be the worst Ags, honestly. The other Ags, the Queen of Pain Ags, is pretty bad, but this one is absolutely terrible. Just complete waste of time and gold and anything. Like, honestly, just having this ability, like just having an extra key that you have to push, and having something where you could actually, click it accidentally and then like cost yourself mana, is honestly not even worth like having it, even if you got it for free. That's how bad this is, I feel like. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just feels terrible. So yeah, they buffed him, but whatever. Visage, another very annoying hero. So they changed the Agnum's Shard, or just nerfed it. The cooldown was increased from 60 to 65 seconds. Not a huge change. I think Wraith Pact is more of the big change. Like with Undying and some of these other heroes, that's the change that's going to see, okay, is that enough to get Visage out of the meta, or like at least not as good. Warlock, they constantly buff this hero. So upheaval damage per second is increased, and the chaotic offering, the golem armor, is also increased. They just want this hero to be meta. They're like, please, please, Warlock, be meta, be meta. We'll see if it's meta. I don't know. It's definitely a lot better than it used to be. It definitely can carry games at low MMR, but we'll see in higher MMR if it actually is worth it. Wind Ranger, small buffs here, just more damage, better as a core. I think it was obviously a support last time when Seb played it, and then it got nerfed a little bit with the shard and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is one of those heroes that I think it's better as a core. You want it to be a core. You kind of want it to be a mid. It's just very awkward. These aren't enough to like make it relevant, I think, but they just want to buff it here and there. And then finally we have Wraith King. This hero is probably one of the worst carries right now for whatever reason. I just think that, I mean, they changed the ult. They made it like 60 seconds instead of 40. They made things like the skeletons a little bit worse, but then it was like kind of better, but kind of worse. But now they actually made this hero, I think, significantly better, because the projectile speed on Wraith Blast is very good, because obviously now you're just going to be able to hit people with it better. They're not going to run away as much when you're hitting them. And I mean, they're still going to be able to react, don't get me wrong, but it's just not going to be as easy. And then the big thing is that the Vampiric Spirit, these skeletons now get 25 additional movement and attack speed when attacking an enemy affected by this Wraith Fire Blast. So obviously what you do is you spawn your skeletons, you stun the guy, they all chase him and they attack him. I think this is really good in the laning stage, and obviously just in general, but especially for the laning stage. Like, look out for Wraith King to actually be really good, because I think this hero is potentially a very good late game carry. Maybe not the best. It can get kited pretty well. And I think it didn't deal well with Wraith Pact, because it's about like this one-hit crit and stuff like that. But now the Wraith Pact's kind of gone, and this hero's laning stage is way better. Look for Wraith King to potentially be very good, because this makes the laning stage way better on this hero. So that's Wraith King. Those are all of the changes for the patch 7.32D. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the changes. Let me know what Shadow Demon spell does, or if it matters, and what you guys think about the changes. I'm kind of happy with these changes. I like them. I understand that it's been a while since a patch, but it's kind of the off season for Dota. They're not going to change anything crazy right now. I kind of like where Dota is, other than Wraith Pact and some of this other stuff. So I'm glad they nerfed those things. And I think just nerfing Wraith Pact enough is enough to change the meta a lot. So I'm excited to see what happens. And then as we get into the next DPC season here, next month or so, I think then another patch, like a bigger patch, will come out. 7.33, I think, will come out then. And we'll see what happens with that. You know, hopefully it's pretty big. We get a new hero or something like that. But I think I'm satisfied with this update, especially with the nerfs to some of the broken stuff. And I think that will actually change the meta a lot. Even though there's not crazy updates in this, I think just that alone, like I said, is going to change the meta a lot. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. And if you like the video, consider watching other ones. Go to my Discord, join that already. If you want coaching, I also offer that there at Patreon, at the link down below. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.